campaigning is something else. It really is. It's very, very difficult.
Campaign is critical. I really loved campaigning. It was a lot of fun because it taught me what the people were interested in.
I loved campaigning. I can remember getting home at night after going door to door and hadn't realized how tired I was. I was absolutely exhausted.
You got to go out and knock on doors. You got to go raise money and do all these things, and it's a little different.
I enjoy, actually meeting with the community and enjoy interacting and listening to the community.
I always say that it's like the worst job interview you can imagine, because you want to be in the legislature, you want the job, but in order to get the job, you have to go through this ugly process of campaigning.
Mostly it was door-to-door community effort kind of campaigning. Bringing in a lot of volunteers and pounding on doors was really the way it happened.
If you're talking about roughly 60,000 voters, in a primary about 32 or 3,000, you are lucky if they know your name, let alone do they know what you stand for. You have principles, but you realize that 90% of the voters are never going to hear you, they're not going to come to a coffee, they're never going to see you, and if some nice, friendly face raps on their door and says, "Here, would you please vote for Bob Packwood?" that may be a determining factor in their mind.
Hand everybody your card. Here's my card. I'm running for the legislature. I'd like to have your vote. I'm Mr. Hunt. This is my picture here on the card. We'd get up every morning at 5 o'clock and go down to the industrial section and hand out my literature. And, lots of people would make smart remarks and tear them up, but lots of people would take those literatures. And they'd have these little coffee trucks that would go from gate to gate. They might be at Gunderson Brothers at 6 o'clock, they might be at Swan Island at 7 when the shift started. And we just follow the coffee truck.
What you had to do was a lot of footwork, just door to door, just pounding the pavement up and down.
And we lived on a farm 15 miles east of Bend, so I would put a camp cooler and water and fruit and sandwiches and just go door to door all day. So it's a lot more distance in between homes and farms. And some people just, are very happy to have you come by.
One of the things that happened during campaigning often was that it was the harvest season, and people would share what they just brought in from the garden with me.
But mostly the rural areas, a lot of times I would cover those areas by having meeting several people and saying I want to have something at the local Grange Hall, and we'd have a reception there and have a potluck. Rural people still like potlucks. So everybody brings a dish and comes, and then I'd give a speech and say why I wanted to represent them. So that worked well for me.
It's not the canned stuff. It's the engaging with the members of your community and interacting with them that wins elections and that counts.
So the vehicles were the local newspaper. Most of us couldn't afford to buy a lot of advertising in the major state papers, the Oregonian and the Journal, and you saved that for the last couple of days. Television was unheard of in legislative races because the districts were so small in geography that you'd be buying for the entire region to try to talk to your constituents in Metzger and Tigard and Sherwood.
And you did bumper strips, and you'd have lawn signs. Direct mail wasn't very expensive in those days. Postage was a whole lot less. So you could do a mail campaign as well.
I was the first person to have lawn signs. And that wasn't a stroke of genius. You go around and you see, here's this real estate sign. This house for sale by Jones. This house for sale by Smith. This house for sale by Green. And you're thinking, well, why not this house for Packwood? And so we did it, and no one had ever done it. See, this didn't require an Einstein to figure it out.
Only about 10% of the people on a post-election interview could tell me who they voted for in their state Senate district. But if they see the name, they say, oh, I voted for that person. That emblazoned on me the need to have those big signs.
We patterned our campaign after Bob Packwood's earlier campaigns, and he had put together a campaign manual on how to get elected to the legislature. And it was kind of the Bible at the time. And people that followed that ran successful campaigns, and they may not always have gotten elected, but they ran successful campaigns.
Oh, campaigning was critical to the process of understanding your district and what the people expected and some of their thoughts about the issues.
I enjoyed it, and it was really delightful to learn about the people in the district.
I had a lot of coffees, and I'm not sure if that's done today or not, but they are very informative to the candidate. They also let the people know who you are.
Give the other person the right of understanding where you're coming from, but give them the courtesy to also understand where they're coming from, that maybe they have a better idea on an issue than you do.
And lucky for me, there was somebody that I had known who was at University of Oregon who actually was involved with computers in those days. So I was one of the first legislators that he ran with his computer stuff, an analysis of what my basic constituents cared about. So early on, all of a sudden, I realized more than anybody else who ever challenged me in the district that I had to talk about the environment, because that was a core piece that nobody talked about then, but I knew that my constituent cared about that.
A lot of people don't understand that they don't need to know everything. I mean, I didn't know much of anything other than agriculture and selling real estate in Portland and Lake Oswego, but I didn't know a lot of things that government does and a lot of things that are all the issues. But I found out that people don't care how much you know as much as if you'll listen. And I always listened. I think that's so important to hear. And then I'd go to speeches and I'd say, well, I've been going door to door and this is what people are telling me. Then it wasn't me and my ideas, it was what the people that I'm listening to want. And that's more important, I think, in campaigning.
But I think you learn a lot about listening to people. You learn a lot about things like compromise, like learning from people and figuring out, well, maybe you really ought to think about this issue a little better and a little wider and a little differently.
You have to believe in the system. And the system is a representative form of government. And if the people like you, they'll vote for you. If they don't, they won't. Sun comes up the next day. And I believe, honestly, that Oregonians, well, beyond Oregonians, human being, put a higher standard on credibility, honesty. I can believe him. He tells the truth. I can depend on him. They put a higher standard on that than they do on any particular issue they might disagree with you on.
If a person is inclined to be of good spirit, is inclined to try to make a point that somebody else will pay attention to, I hope that they would think about representing their neighbors. They shouldn't just assume that they've got it right and go try to be a representative without their neighbors saying, we want you to represent us. There is a covenant that is created here.
I try to convey to people that it's there, if you have an interest in this, you have a real chance of being involved, because not many people will take the effort. And those people need you. They need you to represent them.